any caterpillars around that I could find. The only good thing is the other day down at Scenic Hudson, maybe a week ago, there were
Yeah.
so many down there. And I was just figuring that they were going down the Hudson to go congregate
Okay.
for one of their crossings. But there's a lot of them down there.
We're live now.
Okay,
Oh, it's
well,
the same one.
Okay, Brian.
I will officially call the meeting to order. Now that Brenda's given us the update on the Monarchs.
Absolutely.
And I'll start with some quick announcements. I guess the only announcement, well, I guess I'll start with the checks because those are, we always have to get those out of the way. Checks over $25,000. We had one to Creighton Manning, which was part of the Main Street and Station Road Pedestrian Improvement Project. It came out of the capital fund. That was $37,204.31. We had 3 checks that were paid, well, checks and ACH over $25,000. One was to Gina Fia Corp., which is also part of the Main Street and Station Road Pedestrian Improvement Project from the capital fund. That was $147,878.50. We had Landscape Inc., was part of the Hudson View Park Culvert Replacement Project, also from the capital fund, $67,942.16. And then last, we had JC Land and Site Development Inc., which is part of the Matheson Park Playground, also came out of the capital account, and that was an ACH payment of $91,506.37. The only announcement I have that isn't related to a public hearing is just kind of an update on what's happening for Halloween. We've gotten a lot of questions. I've sent out one email. We'll probably send out some more emails. But what we're asking people to do is to have a traditional Halloween, which we define as kind of staying in your own neighborhood and trick-or-treating, et cetera. Even if in your own neighborhoods, we ask that you try to keep crowds to a minimum. We ask that you don't do traditional trick-or-treating where you ring a doorbell and let someone reach into a pumpkin or something. We ask that you individually wrap candy. These are all CDC guidelines. Individually wrap candy and leave them outside. There's been some creative designs I've seen where people have created like spider web things where they've hung them on them. They have ghosts that give out the candy, that kind of thing. So be as creative as you want with the intention of having as little physical interaction with trick-or-treaters and others as possible. We've also unfortunately canceled the Halloween parade. The fire department is not giving out candy this year, and we're also not providing candy to people in the downtown area, all with the goal of trying to avoid large crowds in the downtown area. We've reached out to the bands that typically play on Halloween Eve, and they are not going to be playing on Halloween. They will be playing the night before in a theater event where they'll be rebroadcasting the Halloween. There was actually a half Halloween concert, but I think it's $12. You can stream it. It's going to be a fun night that Friday before Halloween on the 30th. So you can go to the Irvington Theater website to check that out. It's also a great way to support the theater while it remains dark in person, if not in spirit. So please, again, just use some common sense on Halloween. We're not going to be ticketing kids and arresting parents, but we just want to try to minimize crowds, especially, large crowds in the downtown area. Now on to the other official announcement, which is a public hearing to consider a local law amending the zoning code to create the North Broadway Mixed Use District, which is scheduled for Monday, November 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. I will make a motion if I can have a second to schedule that public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay. So we have
And the draft, by the way, the draft of that revised legislation will be out probably later this week, I think, right? Soon, anyway. But
I
it's
sent it already.
it's not attached to the agenda, so it'll be out and published.
Oh,
by the
okay.
end of
Did
the
you
week.
want me to go through the changes, Brian, or not? No? Okay.
Well, we can go over them next time when we had the public hearing.
Okay.
But we will make sure we post them as soon as possible. Anyone else have announcements? Otherwise, I'll go on to public correspondence, which there's just one. I will go on to public correspondence. We have a letter from Alice Bacone to the mayor and trustees. I hear you are currently deliberating on whether access to Matheson Park should be limited to residents of Irvington. I strongly believe that all human beings, regardless of where they happen to currently reside, should be allowed to enjoy the park on an equal basis. Canines are a whole other story, but that's for another day. Yours truly, Alice Bacone. And that's it for correspondence. I will open up the floor to public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. So nothing from the public hearings that are below. And you could just click raise your hand and Larry will call on you and you'll be unmuted. Otherwise, we'll give you a minute here. So why don't we move on to consent agenda? If you raise your hand, we'll still let you speak now. There will be ability to speak at the end as well. But I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll note that it was just the actual minutes of the October 5th meeting that we approved. Next, we'll have a continuation of the public hearing to consider a local law amending the use of gas-powered leaf blowers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Brian, I thought this is one you were talking about before.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
okay.
No,
Sorry.
no, yeah, we'll definitely want you to go over the changes here, Mary Ann.
Okay, all right, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You really would have confused people if you described the changes to Broadway.
Yeah, and you're not kidding. Sorry about that. No, and I don't have those ready. I'll have them ready at the end of the week. Okay, the changes over the current law are there's 10 of them. One is that effective December 16th, 2023, gas-powered leaf blowers aren't going to be allowed. Okay. Then the second one is that the dates for the spring and fall cleanup period were modified a little bit from March 15th through June 1st to March 15th through May 15th, and October 1st through December 15th. Before it was September 15th to December 15th. So it's October 1st to December 15th. So 1 month is cut out. And also not on Sundays and holidays. So it can only be done on Monday and Friday between 8 to 5, which is what it is now, and Saturday only from 10 to 4. The fourth change is that the provision that allowed fall cleanups on 1 or 2 family properties with 1 gas-powered leaf blower for 30 minutes during certain times, that was eliminated. That's out altogether. Also out, although it's not really a change because it wasn't effective as of December 31st, 2018, also is allowing fall cleanups on multifamily and cluster residential developments. Those are out. Okay, there was a provision that walk-behind leaf blowers can't be used unless the property that's being cleaned is greater than ½ an acre. That was taken out. And that no more than a total of 2 handheld or backpack leaf blowers may be used at a time unless the property is greater than ½ acre. That was taken out. A lot of this stuff was taken out because it was too complicated. And then also the provision on noise levels was taken out. So it just says that they have to, the leaf blowers have to meet EPA standards, exhaust standards. Then the fines were changed so that the penalty provision, so that the people responsible are any person found guilty of violating the thing and any property owner. So anybody using a worker using a leaf blower and the property owner could be responsible. And the fines were upped from 100 to 250 for a first offense, and from 250 to 500 for any subsequent offense. That's
Okay.
it.
Hey, Larry.
Brian, because of these changes, the law is being renoticed and the public hearing will be continued on November 2nd because the changes were obviously extensive from the last time that you considered this.
So what happened to the discussion of having a 2 or 3 year review requirement in the law?
No, that's why it says that no gas-powered leaf blowers after December 2023.
Oh, okay, okay.
That was the
I
first
don't-
thing I said. So that if at that point it may go in effect or you may change it.
Yep. Okay.
Right, so it's, I think just to make that a little clearer, as Mark implied, in our board discussions about this, we felt this was the best way, one, to give some impetus to the educational process, which is really going to be required to happen between now and December of 2023. And again, in December of 2023, as the law is written now, gas leaf blowers will be outlawed. But it doesn't mean that a board of trustees in 2023 may review and say, battery operated leaf blowers still don't work well enough. It'll force them to make a decision if they want to change that.
Exactly. I think
We also discussed one thing in the work session that some people brought up from the public, and that was if there is concern that before 2023, if we're still dealing with health issues related to the pandemic, if the village chooses to make some emergency decisions, that could be put in place and things could change due to emergency decisions. So it doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but it could happen.
By that, you mean a ban on usage?
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's kind of what happened when the beginning of the pandemic, right? Things were totally shut down. And so it's just, it's a piece in there that seemed important to people in the public, and it's also pretty important to me too. So I'm glad that's clarified.
Yeah, and I think what we looked at the putting the sunsetting date was similar to the way that the state does some of their more contentious items, where it forces them to talk about it again and bring it up again. I think Larry Schaffler used the example of rent control. So that way it has to be discussed. It has to be publicly discussed, because you could potentially have, if we didn't put that sunset provision in, it could just, they would never have to potentially talk about it ever again. But now they have to either let it just go away if they'd like to do that, or they have to talk about it to extend it. We made it harder to continue the status quo, I think is the short answer. But at the same time, we listened to what current landscapers have said about, the electric leaf blowers are not ready for prime time, especially not for fall cleanups. And we had, it was Janice and I guess Larry Lockheed who sat in on a panel with concerned citizens as well as landscapers on both sides of the issue. Some that wanted to ban and some that wanted it to continue forever unabated. And kind of came to the conclusion that we need education as well, because I've contended many times, and I think others on the board have, that there is a dislocation between the expectations of homeowners and what the landscapers believe the expectation of all homeowners are. I don't doubt that there's some that want every blade of grass blown every week of the year, but I think there's a vast majority that do not care that much about it. So we'll start working on that education process. That'll be both sides. It'd be the homeowners and the landscapers. So, but otherwise, we will open up to public comment. Anything about the gas powered leaf blower law and update. Although it's a large update, so it's a lot to probably just listen to and understand the changes. But we're happy to take any calls or discussion on it now, or you can always hear comments next week, or next meeting, which is November 2nd, when we'll have the hearing continue.
Okay.
Looks like Chet. There he is. Hey, Chet, I think you're on the air.
Chet?
You look unmuted, Chet, but we're not hearing anything.
Chet, you're usually so good at this.
We can usually hear you, Chet. Can't hear a thing.
Maybe it's a Chet imposter.
Okay, well, there's certainly time to submit a comment if this isn't working out. All right. We'll try
We'll
to
move on.
time, I think.
The next item on the agenda, Chet, we can come back to you if if you still have something to say, or you can send us a chat as well. The next item on the agenda is actually an exciting one. This is our first application for a local landmark designation. And this is for 45 West Clinton Avenue, probably our most famous building in town, the Octagon House. We couldn't be more excited to have this be the first application. Not that the Octagon House needs a lot of additional protections or renowned, because I think Ms. Lombardi's kind of gotten the Octagon House all the credit it deserves. So we are super happy that he's elected to come and speak to us tonight and formally apply for an application for a local landmark designation. So.
Can I say a few words if I
Yes,
could?
please.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we are honored to have the Ormestein Octagon House become an Irvington Village landmark. For the past 42 years, my family has conserved and restored this lyrical structure. When it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, it was one of only 1,200 National Historic landmarks, places designated by the Secretary of the Interior as being of national historic significance. As such, we understand its importance and significance. Being an Irvington landmark adds another layer of recognition to the importance of this house and our need for continuing conservation. We hope that many more important Irvington structures will join us in this. Thank you.
That's great.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Very well said. Again, it's a house that is not only celebrated locally, but, I'd say nationally, if not internationally. It's one of those things that, you say you're from Irvington, often I get, oh, that's where the Octagon House is. So we're super proud that that the building's here in this village, and I think it's the perfect application to be the first one for local landmark designation. If anybody else wants to say anything before I read the resolution making it official.
Are we able to have comments from from those in attendance other than us? I mean, there might be some people who want to speak who are.
Sure.
Okay, I just
Sure.
didn't.
Yeah, and actually there are a couple of people who have their hands up. Chad has his hand up again. Let me try to allow him to talk. Hold on.
Okay, can you
Yeah.
guys hear me now?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, I apologize for my glitch before, but I was on another Zoom call on my computer and one on my phone, and I'm just got frolicsed up. So let me, if I can, address this application by the Octagon House, and then when you're ready, I'd like to go back and talk about the thing I was trying to talk about before.
Sure.
With respect to this application by the Octagon House, I fully support it. I'm a member of the historical board. It was Irvington Historical Society, and a subcommittee of that society that has been working specifically on how to implement the local landmark law. And we have done several things that the Lombardis have been directly involved with. And one is to prepare the application that was, I think, used by the Lombardis to apply for local landmark status. We've also been talking a lot about how important it is, with having created this law, for a number of, to begin to exercise it, to have beautiful homes such as the Octagon House and other ones around the village go through the application process, be designated, and therefore be recognized by the village for the unique things they bring to us. With respect to the Octagon House, the Lombardis have done an amazing job. They've just brought to life a wonderful aspect of our village. And I think it clearly qualifies under the law. It's exactly the right step that I think will lead other people to think about applying under the law. And I think it's great. So with that, I fully support what the Lombardis have done. And I think it's a wonderful step for the village.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one other comment.
Yeah,
Hold
Earl, I assume Ferguson, but don't want to make any conclusions.
on. Earl, you're on.
He's muted. Earlier,
Just have to unmute yourself.
Okay, here I am.
There you
Yep,
Anyway,
good.
Okay.
I sit on that same committee with Chet at the Historical Society. And we were very proud to have the Octagon House, or the Armour-Steiner, whatever you wish to call it, nominated as a local landmark, to be designated as a local landmark. And it is, I mean, it may be a bit repetitive, but it is a wonderful example of the mid to late 19th century Victorian architecture, and it's in that neoclassical style, and very uniquely done in that style. It is truly unique. It's a structure that's, as Brian said, it's recognized on a national and state as well as county level, and certainly by us residents of our village who treasure it as a significant contribution to the historical character of the village, of our entire community. And we should feel fortunate to have Joe and Michael and the Lombardi family work so hard for so many years to preserve the building and restore it right down to the very fine decorative details and ornamentation. We should be proud to, have it designated as our first local landmark. So I endorse it wholeheartedly. Thank you very much, Joe and Michael and the family, and to you, the board, for reviewing it and considering it.
Thank you, Earl.
I didn't do a lot of review, not formal review.
You are now.
I am now. Yes. But we should also probably mention there's an unbelievable new book out that the Lombardi family put together as well about the Armour-Steiner Octagon House. That's as beautiful as the building, if that's possible. So it's a great way to get a quick tour. Actually, it's not that quick. It's a full-size book, but it is a great way to be able to visit the house anytime you like.
Right.
Okay. One other comment. Hold on.
Sure. Former mayor.
There we go. Nikki, there you go.
Hi, thank you. I'll make this as short as a tweet. I am grateful to Joe for all that he has done for the Octagon House and for the village, and I totally endorse the designation. Thank you.
Great.
You?
So is that all the hands up, Larry, that are?
Yes, here so.
Okay, I did want to say just a word or two, maybe others in the board do too, but without a doubt, I'm thrilled that the Lombardis are our premier first applicants, and as Chet mentioned, they're not only the applicants, but they have volunteered their time to actually help create that application, shall we say, form that seemed to be more encouraging to people who might in their back of their minds think, maybe my property has some important history to it. And it's from my looking at things, when it was just kind of, well, write up a paragraph and we'll think about it. This seemed to be a very helpful way to make it understandable. So if somebody calls Brenda's office and says, hey, I want to apply, or Larry's or whoever, I'd like to be a local landmark. What do I have to do? Here is this form that's very understandable. And I think there are many other places in the village that could very well meet the criteria. Some obviously, and some, like, wow, I didn't know that about my own house, and you investigate your own house, and that's pretty exciting. So when I just look at the code book now and I see chapter 144, that's all about local landmarks, I can't be more thrilled that, Irvington has really stepped up to appreciate draw attention to and honor our historic resources that are here, and very much especially the Lombardi's beautiful Octagon House. So I guess that's a way of saying I'm going to support this application.
We have another person with a comment, Mayor?
Yes.
All right.
SAK 1221.
Okay. Okay. Not sure who it is, so you're,
I'm sorry, I didn't rename myself. It's Sarah Kelsey, and I am with both the Irvington Historical Society, and also I do walks and tours for the Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct. And what I like about this measure, this license, is that it makes it viable for people to love their homes and improve them and honor their history. And it makes it attractive for people to come to Irvington. When they come to Irvington, they spend money here. So I love it. Joe's done a wonderful job.
thank you. Okay. I think that's it.
Great. All right. I think it looks like that's it. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm excited to read the resolution. All right, I'm gonna get started then. Whereas Joseph Pell Lombardi, owner of 45 West Clinton Avenue, AKA the Armour Steiner Octagon House, requested voluntary designation as a local landmark pursuant to Chapter 144 of the Village Code. And whereas the board has reviewed the information submitted by the owner in support of the requested action and has determined that the property meets the criteria for a local landmark designation as shown in 144(3D in the Village Code, now therefore be it resolved to designate the property located at 45 West Clinton Avenue, AKA the Armour Steiner Octagon House, owned by Joseph Pell Lombardi, as a local landmark in the Village of Irvington. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And well done. He even put it up the picture. He saved it.
There you go.
Now they know which Octagon House we're talking about.
Thank you. It's always sunny at the Octagon House.
And
Well,
congratulations.
The papers that you submitted, for some people, if they read all the backup to the agenda, are going to know more about the Octagon House
Good.
than they probably knew before. So I'm going to ask that, everybody who's listening into this meeting, be sure to read up on it.
I would second that, because there's so many unexpectedly interesting facts and aspects to how this house came about. Is quite fascinating.
Or maybe we could even boost it to the homepage, Larry, as Village News.
Hey, yeah.
And it was accepted as the first village landmark, and that here's the descriptive paperwork that you can review,
Absolutely.
rather than hiding it in an agenda.
Sure. Very good.
Include it in your mayor's letter. Anybody who thinks about Halloween can also think about the history of the village.
Well, there is that movie that was filmed there that
Yes,
we actually watch every Halloween. That's from like the 70s.
Yes.
It's not a great movie, but it definitely features the house very well. I actually think it's a great movie. And it's so
You
bad.
know the name- What's the name of it, Brian? Oh, sorry.
No, I would have mentioned it if my brain was working, but I'll think of it by the end of the meeting. By the time we get to public comment the next time around. I don't know if
Okay.
Mr. Lombardi knows it off the top of his head, but
The nesting.
the nesting, there it is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I have it on DVD, which
It
is
is a Halloween type movie for sure.
definitely
Yeah. Okay.
All right, well,
the nesting. See, saved me some work. But thank you so much. Congratulations, and it's obviously a labor of love because it's unbelievable. I think it was restored back to what the Armour Steiners would have dreamed it would be, as opposed to just a typical renovation. It's truly unbelievable, from the restoration work to the furnishings. So
I also see that Michael Lombardi is on the attendees, and he deserves thanks too for meeting with us a few times and keeping the application alive and moving it forward. So thank you, Michael.
It's very much a family effort. So it's Michael Lombardi and it's Jess Lombardi, and even Enzo, little Enzo gets out there sometimes. So all of Lombardi's are part of this. And we all thank the board and Irvington from the bottom of our heart for your recognition and your understanding about this house, because you've been so supportive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Great.
Okay.
For me, it's the Lombardi Octagon House, but that's okay. But thanks again for all the hard work, and it's quite an honor to be the first. And we hope that everyone doesn't hold themselves up to this bar to be a historical, designation in the village, because that'd be a high bar. So, but it's definitely worthy of the first. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Now
you.
on to an equally exciting item, which is approval of a shared service and intermunicipal agreement for the New York State DEC grant for a recycling app.
Yeah, that I'm sorry to follow that up with this.
Talk about letting the wind out of a balloon, but it is a recycling app, so it's not so bad.
Yeah. So this is very straightforward. We did this last year in cooperation with the Village of Tarrytown and several other villages. The recycling app that we currently use is the one that's sponsored by Sustainable Westchester. It's kind of purchased cooperatively, and also cooperatively is that we've applied for a reimbursement of 50% of the cost of that. The cost is very little to begin with. It's on the order of $3,000. So this is a very small grant, but we are part of it. And so again, basically same intermunicipal agreement as last year.
And the app's, I mean, all kidding aside, the app is actually pretty good. I mean, I have it, I refer to it. It's gives me nice reminders. It's actually pretty good.
I get it. Bing.
Yeah. I get to tell my son to make sure he puts the recycling out. It's very handy. Any questions on this, or should I get back to reading?
Read away.
Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorize the village administrator to execute a shared services intermunicipal agreement for a multi-municipal grant to the New York State Department of Conservation for a shared recycling app for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021 to be renewed from year to year. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mayor, before we get moved on too far here, I think Chet had
Oh,
a comment
yes.
on leaf blowers. Yeah, so before we
Yes.
get too far out of that, Chet, do you want to raise your hand again so I can? There we go. There you go.
Good. So again, I apologize profusely for my technical screw up before, and I
No worries.
went in the middle of this, but I do have a couple of comments on the proposed amendments to the leaf blower law. One, I appreciate what a challenging issue this is of balancing many interests that are legitimate and competing, and it's difficult to do. And I also congratulate you, all of you, on putting out a future goal of getting rid of gas leaf blowers by December of 2023. I think that's a great goal for our village. I would just say, however, that obviously, as I think someone noted, a later board could revisit that in the future and change it. So I would ask only that your commitment to getting toward that goal stick with everybody, and so that if you're still on the board, you can continue to pound the table to try to accomplish this. What I do want to talk about, however, are the changes to section 148-4B10B-C, which are the small sections that were removed. There are three of them. One is that this is until 12/16/23, took out the fact that no walk behind leaf blowers can be used on acreages that's less than a half an acre, that you can't have more than 2 handheld leaf blowers on less than half an acre, and removing the specific decibel level criteria of not being able to be above a certain decibel. And I heard the comment that they're complicated and hard to follow, and I appreciate that. However, the net result of that is that between now and December of 2023, leaf blowers, gas leaf blowers, when they're allowed, can be used in ways that they can't be used right now, and can be used. And I'll give you an example. On Station Road, or in that area of Spiral Park, where most of the property is less than a half an acre, and this has been a big issue in that area, removing these provisions would allow landscapers to come in and use multiple gas-powered leaf blowers simultaneously on all the small properties without any express noise limitation other than what might be in the manufacturer's specifications, which no one will know and could never enforce. And I recognize you're trying to balance, taking out complexities in the law and trying to ensure that, landscapers can do their job. But the net result of taking these provisions out is that for the next 2 years, it will be essentially the ability in neighborhoods like that to use widespread use of gas leaf blowers during the times you can use it without no limitations on the number on a specific yard, or really no effective tool for limiting noise. And I would ask the board to reconsider removing those provisions. I recognize they're difficult to follow, but I think without them, you basically have cut deeply into one of the goals of this was to reduce the noise in our neighborhoods. So with that, I finish. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think we did discuss that somewhat. And I think part of it, Chet, is that by saying you can only have two, leaf blowers, handheld leaf blowers, and no push behind and that sort of thing. What we've heard from landscapers is, yeah, you can do that. And I'm going to have to do it for 45 minutes, or I could do it for 10 minutes with everything. And it's an interesting balance. And, I think that's going to be part of the education. I would like to think that when we came to 2023, there's very few people are going to be affected by it because we'll be so successful in saying, hey, did you know, I've had it with my own landscapers I've talked about many times where I haven't ever told them that I need them to blow my leaves, more than maybe one fall cleanup day and one spring cleanup day. But they were doing it every week, even when it was in the non-leaf blower season, they were still doing it. And I'd go out and tell them to stop, and they'd almost want to start up again because they were, just so trained to do it. So, I definitely hear what you're saying. I just think I think what we really want to get to is a point where it'll be, you turn the calendar and it's, September 15th or whatever dates we decide. And the police go out and they see a gas powered leaf blower and they issue a ticket immediately. There's no getting a decibel level out. There's no counting leaf blowers. There's no, oh, you put one back on the truck once you knew the police were coming or whatever. It's just, we just want to make it as simple as possible and enforceable as possible, because I think what happened now is we have all these well-intentioned clauses in there that just make everyone throw up their hands and say, I don't even know what to do anymore. So I definitely understand what you're saying, and we'll definitely consider your comments, but just wanted to share some of our thoughts that we've talked about at some of the work sessions.
And Brian, I'm sure Chet's probably aware of this, but that activity with multiple blowers and walk behinds being used everywhere, including small properties, was happening anyways. It's just that it was never enforceable as a violation. So I think that the key is what you said, which is to simplify to the point that wrong date on the calendar, gas blower of any kind, that's a ticket. So there are, the other restrictions were making it too difficult and too many loopholes for the police to effectively enforce, I think.
The other thing I would just add is in terms of the actual decibel level, in terms of, in what was removed, that was never really a rule about measuring decibel levels. It was a manufacturer's decibel level on the purchase of the equipment. Most of the new equipment that's purchased that is still gas leaf blowers now pretty much meet what those rules were in terms of, I think it was 65 decibels at the time. So that rule was really not intended to have someone take out a decibel meter and stand 50 feet away or whatever, and then have a correspondence. It was really just so the landscapers knew that they had to use modern equipment that was at least meeting the latest standards.
Okay,
Great.
thanks, Chet.
Should we get on to declaring a public emergency in connection with the Irvington Public Library mold removal project? I'm guessing this is some kind of technicality, so we don't have to go to bid or something.
Well, yeah, that is true. And an emergency obviously sounds very extreme, but the situation is that there was a leak in an apartment above the library. It was undetected for a period of time, and the moisture has caused mold to grow. So we're, pursuing from an insurance standpoint, but at the same time, we need to get it cleaned up while the library is being used less than it otherwise would have. So it's not a tremendous cost, and when I say tremendous, I mean it's somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000, which I know sounds like a lot, but the bidding limit is $35,000, so we're just over the bidding limit. We have gotten two written quotes, so it is competitive from that standpoint. But to prepare specifications, go out to bid would probably cost us, probably $5,000 to $7,000 just to prepare specifications, and we'd be waiting 3 to 4 weeks to get this done. So this is an important enough issue, should be addressed right away. And that's what our recommendation
Especially
is.
while the library is in essence closed, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
Brian, you're fading out a little bit. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, the last thing you said.
I was just saying, it's also good to get this done quickly, so it's while the library is closed. I mean,
Yes.
hopefully it'll be reopening again. I don't know when, but hopefully it'll be mold free by the time we open it up. So
Exactly. Okay.
all right, I'm ready to start reading again. Whereas a leak has caused mold to form in parts of the Irvington Public Library building, and whereas immediate removal of the mold is necessary to prevent injury or illness, and whereas the Board of Trustees finds that the state of the Irvington Public Library is a public emergency, and whereas the Board of Trustees desires to retain contractors to complete the project in order to resolve this public emergency, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees declares a public emergency with respect to the state of the Irvington Public Library, and be it further resolved that because of this public emergency, immediate action is required and the completion of the project cannot await competitive bidding. Be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees is authorized to retain contractors to complete the project. And be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees and the village administrator are authorized, empowered, and directed to take any and all actions to execute and deliver any and all instruments in order to effect the foregoing resolutions. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next up is a volunteer appointment to the Ethics Committee. Our current chairman of the Ethics Board, Peter Derby, has nominated Saval Sims as a member. I actually met with her last week. She seems not only willing, but unbelievably qualified to do it as well. She's a relatively newer resident to the village. She moved here in June of 2019, but she actually lives near Peter, so he's gotten to know her very well. I had a great conversation with her, and she seemed excited to start right away. I did explain the ethics board doesn't meet that often, but she understood that and was still very excited to join such an important board.
Oh.
So if we want to have any public comment on this, or I think Connie, you did bring up the
Oh yeah, I happen to have the big green code book next to me.
newly updated.
Newly updated that I picked up from Brenda. So I just flipped through there, and I'm sure this is a wonderful addition, and I welcome volunteers to our volunteer boards, that's for sure. And
Just want to make sure we're within the.
right, we have, maybe it just has to be subject to the administrators check. We can't have more than 2 members who are the same political party. So, I mean, we don't, and they have to be village residents. So I don't know if it's just a quick check of the people who are on this and make sure we're not obeying our own law, to know
Sure.
that everybody on this board is a village resident, and that we know their political parties, so that we don't have more than 2 from any one party. I don't know if I think that's a pretty easy thing to check. I'm willing to help if that would.
I don't think we have even 2 from. I don't think we even have 2 from any one party.
I think we do. I started to do some investigating, so I don't want to, I don't think I'm absolutely sure, but If we could check, I think it would help. Then it would be 3.
Okay. We can double check that.
So yes, a point, but
There's
subject
actually,
to.
it's funny because Peter Derby, who I thought was a Democrat, actually said when he was on the SEC, he went undeclared also. So he might be all undeclared, but we'll look into it.
Could be, but I
Into
just
it, yeah.
think better than to just break our own rules.
Sure. So resolved to appoint Savelle Sims as a member of the Ethics Board for a term to expire December 2024, subject to resolution of the party issue. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up, we have a resignation from the farmer's market. If anybody wants to say anything other than to thank Susie Frommer for serving on the farmer's market committee.
Well, I'll say Susie's done a wonderful job. She really was a key person in the continuation and success of the farmer's market. She was key in moving it from the weekdays to the weekends and has really carried it through in a great way. And she's left it in good hands as well.
Excellent. Resolved to accept with regret the resignation of Susie Frommer from the Farmers Market Committee effective October 20th, 2020. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up, we have reports of board, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Start with Mark.
I don't have anything at the moment.
Okay. We'll move on to Larry.
Yeah, let me just find it.
Perfect. I have a phone call I have to take, so.
Okay. The Community Advisory Board Committee will hold their second meeting of the school year tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. virtual meeting. The Executive Committee of the IS Grant will be held next Tuesday, October 27th at 8 a.m., also a virtual meeting. Virtual meetings for RPAC and the Irvington Woods Committee will be announced shortly. The high school cross-country track team ran their first 3 school meet this past Saturday using the trials in the Irvington Woods. Senior food and supply delivery program is still going strong. We are still delivering to around 70 homes each week. We're grateful to have amazing volunteers who are there to help. We'll be delivering on Thanksgiving Day as well. We anticipate close to 100 deliveries. Ways to help will be announced shortly. Our adult softball league is completing the regular season play, starting playoff games. All games should be completed in early November. We have added 3 air purifiers to the O'Hara Nature Center and expect to start holding some indoor classes there in November. Ongoing programs include Lego Snapology, kickball, soccer, youth tennis, baseball, softball, youth dance, music with Mark. Youth tennis starts this Wednesday afternoon. The rec department has reached agreement with Capture Point LLC and their program Community Pass to become our online registration platform. They'll be fully engaged by January 1st, 2021. And there's one more from Joe. Social distancing is still required in all village parks and masks or face coverings are required. We're still having problems with public walking in the right direction and wearing masks when required, especially true in scenic Hudson. Please, everyone, do their part. That's it.
Great. Connie?
Well, you mentioned the theater, and I'll just say again that, Halloween can't be exactly as it was last year, but there are things in the theater. And I think, Brian, you did mention that it's the bands that are often out on the street on Thanksgiving night. You just need to find them in the theater. So check the theater website.
Yep. Halloween Bands Concert, October 30th.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yep.
And Janice is up.
Yes, library, and very appreciative that we approved that emergency resolution. I got a personal tour of the mold. And it's like this soft color. Because the library is closed, you had to really look to see it, but it's all over all the shelves. So This is very good and much appreciated. Meanwhile, the library, they do have the plexiglass in front of the checkout window, and it will be open, the opening hours Monday through Friday from 10 to 1:45, Tuesday evening 5 to 6:45, Saturdays hopefully soon. Now you can do two things. You can either call to arrange books to be delivered to the little table in the lobby, or you can now schedule an in-person half-hour session at the library, no more than 5 people, I believe, at any one time. The number is 591-7840. Please call for both of those purposes. And the library will be closed on Election Day. It seemed to make every kind of sense this year of all years. And they will have additional hours that week to make up for it. The fire department ladder 36 is out of service, but we hope to get it back within the next 2 weeks. Schools, sports have started, but no community spectators, please. Grounds are closed when the school is in session, and that includes the track and the playgrounds. If you must walk through the grounds, please wear a mask. And this, I'm announcing this for the second time because it definitely bears a second announcement, that we are very proud that Dow's Lane is a blue ribbon school of excellence as designated by the New York State Department of Education. That's it.
Excellent. Village Administrator's report.
Nothing tonight.
Clerk Treasurer's report. Muted.
You're muted, Brenda.
Okay.
No report tonight.
Go back to me.
The monarch butterfly.
Yeah.
Village Attorney's report.
No report.
Any additional public comment? Yes.
Hold on. Okay, Jim? There.
Good, go ahead.
You look unmuted to me.
Yeah, I'm not hearing him.
Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There you go.
So sorry.
No worries.
Some sort of Zoom issue there. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and trustees. I don't have any formal legalese on the subject or anything, and I'm sure this is a topic that's come up before, but my family, we're fairly new to Irvington. We moved here in April. We live on Main Street. And the construction, I know that the gas main construction is obviously important, and the curb cuts were happening and all that. But it's just been continuous, and I feel like we don't get a great deal of information about what's happening and when. This morning, for example, at the corner of Continent and Main, there was a jackhammer going again, with from a different company that I never saw anything about, cutting up the curb that had already been replaced. So just respectfully, as there was also, I think last week, like some sidewalk destruction outside of 23 Main, just kind of a lot. And we're working from home now for at least another 8-9 months at least, and have a toddler, et cetera. I'm sure a lot of people are in this same boat, and just want to know, be able to plan better with more information about these construction projects that just seem to keep cropping up,
Sure.
Up and down Main Street. And, that's all.
Sure.
I thank you for the opportunity to say that.
Yep. The curb cuts and, the curb the curb work that was done and the bump outs, that was obviously all the village's, idea in our project. We are lowering some of the curbs, which I think that's the work you're seeing now. And I'm hopeful that that'll be done. Larry, do you have a time frame on that work? Because that's
Yeah, they should be done with all of the demolition and the installation. I think by tomorrow, everything should be poured. So our work will largely be done on Main Street. Con Edison is a different story, of course. We know they're going to be working there at least through the end of the month. And then they're going to start on side streets as well. So as soon as we hear that schedule, we'll post that
Yeah.
updated information.
Unfortunately, we often don't get much better communication from Con Ed than you do. In fact, when they were starting it, the only way we knew about it was because the school was going to be tying into their main a while ago. And that's how we found out about it. So they didn't even ask us or tell us. So, it's gotten a little better with their communication. But, we're often as frustrated as the residents are. Their tentative timeframe now is to finish the Main Street portion, as Larry mentioned, by the end of the month. But then they're going to be tying in the side streets. So it'll probably be less annoying to everyone and more annoying to some. So, I haven't even seen a time frame on that yet, Larry. I don't know if you have, but.
As soon as we know that, we'll have that posted. I think that's absolutely a fair comment. We could keep more updated information on that.
And just a question about that, Jim. I hope you are registered for the village email blasts.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Because not everybody is, and then they don't have information. They don't know why they don't have it. But that's great. That is a really important step.
Do we know from Con Edison which side streets they're going to do? We know it's what, Ferris and Ecker, or we don't know?
Well, it's the side streets on Ferris have been done. So they'll be working on Ecker, Dutcher, and Cottonet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ecker, Dutcher, and Cottonet. And we don't know if they're going to try to do just one at a time or several at a time.
They haven't pulled that permit yet. As soon as they pull the permit, we'll know the timing and we'll communicate that.
Okay, great.
So it's not just me. All right. Thank you all very much.
Great. Thank you.
It's like we live here too. It's like, eek.
Okay, any other public comment?
Doesn't look like it.
Otherwise, I didn't really have any action items except maybe to update the Con Ed schedule.
Yeah, right. I have that and also the posting about the local landmark, the Octagon House.
Right.
All right. Okay.
So we're gonna actually, are we gonna make a motion to adjourn, Larry, and then have a separate?
Yeah, adjourn this meeting and then you'll be opening a public hearing on the next matter, correct?
But we're still on the same Zoom.
Good call. Yeah, no, we're not leaving here.
We're not unzooming and.
Don't go anywhere.
So I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting if I can have a second.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Now I'll make a motion to hold a public hearing on the findings of fact for 2 Hancock Place, Takashi and Akiko Okamura, and the repeal of the Architectural Review Board decision.
Okay, so let me,
I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now open.
thank you. Hold on one second here. Let me get Lino, who is counsel to the party, the Okamuras. Hold on. Okay. All right. Lino, you're on. There you go.
Hey, Larry. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Larry, I think we're also going to have this evening as part of the team, we have Christina Griffin, Josefa, and I think the client is also on. But I guess for promoting the panelists, I think would be helpful if we had Christina and Josefa on as well.
Okay. So I see Christina.
Thank you.
And Josefa, I see her as well. Hold on. Okay.
Okay. If it's okay with you all, if I could start, or if there's anything else that you all needed to do?
No, we're good to go.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, my name is Lino Sciaretta. I'm a partner with the firm Urbano, Condon and Frank. I'm here this evening on behalf of Takashi and Akiko Okamura with respect to this public hearing from their appeal on the decision of the ARB with respect to certain findings that they made with respect to their application. I want to thank all of you in advance for scheduling this meeting this evening, and I appreciate, again, on behalf of the Okamuras and myself, we appreciate the time to be heard tonight. Just by way of background, this appeal stems from a very simple premise, and that's when an applicant has certain approvals from the planning board and the zoning board, that means something. And I know you've received my letter of October 14th, 2020, and I'm not going to go through that letter in any detail. I know if you've read it and it's part of the record, but really, Mayor and members of the board, what we're appealing from is really what we believe is the ARB overstepped their bounds here and, in essence, denied this application on grounds that are outside of the scope of their powers. Particularly when, and just by way of background, this application first came before the planning board back in December of last year. And the purpose of the site plan, the Okamuras wanted some more living space. What they wanted to do was they had this existing garage and they wanted to convert that existing garage to a family room, and they wanted to relocate the garage to the side of the house, okay? And they spent, in essence, December, January, and March before the planning board with respect to that site plan. And again, the minutes of those meetings are part of your record. I'm not going to go through them, but as part of those meetings, one of the things that they talked about was size of the building and FAR, which the village engineer at the first meeting said they were okay with. It was acceptable. It was actually below the threshold required for FAR, which is bulk, massing, and size. So traditionally, as you all know, those are elements really for the planning board to look at. And the planning board did just that with respect to this application. They looked at the garage, they looked at the fence on the application, which were all pursuant to your code structures and elements of site plan. The Okamuras also went to the zoning board for a coverage variance, which they obtained. And in so doing, they relied on these approvals from the planning board and the zoning board in going to the ARB. Now, I will say, when this application was before both the planning and zoning board, you didn't have, and you can look at the minutes, there was no real outcry or public opposition to this application. This is pre-COVID. This was before the pandemic. So these meetings were duly noticed, they were live, and really no one showed up to really object to this particular site plan. That is, of course, until we got to the Architectural Review Board, and there was a lot of discussion at that meeting with respect to the massing, the size, the bulk, and again, I submit to you that those are elements just not for the architectural review. Traditionally, if we had an issue with siding, colors, window treatments, those are traditionally ARB issues. And I said in my letter to you all, in essence, we can't comply and we can't make the ARB happy unless we basically scrap our plans and start from scratch. And I will submit to you that's just not legally the right thing or appropriate, because again, we did receive a site plan, it did receive variances. So we weren't going to go back and start this process over because for somehow the ARB didn't like the size of the garage, which didn't require a variance, and the massing was okay. Now, I have this evening, the reason why I have Christina here, I just want to give you all just a high level with respect to the plan so you all can see exactly what we did here and how we thought this application was, again, a pretty straightforward application. So this appeal tonight, in its simplest terms and process tonight, Mayor and members of the board, is really, we believe the ARB acted completely outside of its scope. So with that, we would like to see a reversal of that decision, which your code puts us in your lap now. So under the Irvington Code, when we are aggrieved by decision of the ARB, it goes before you all to hopefully make a determination on that. So again, that's why we're here this evening. So I just want to reiterate again, when this matter came before the planning board, they approved the size, massing, and locations. And I'm not going to go into the technicalities of it. It's in my letter about what is a structure, FAR with respect to bulk. That's in your code. And there's also statements in the record about the FAR being okay. So without further ado, and I do appreciate your time, I'm just going to turn this over to Christina just to give you all a brief overview of what it is that was approved by the planning board and where we are today. So thank you very much, Christina. If you could take it over from here.
Good evening. I'm Christina Griffin. I'm principal of CJ Studio Architects in Hastings. My firm has been there for 32 years. We do quite a bit of work in Irvington. And I'm very familiar with your codes. I'd like to take you through a brief overview of the project. So if I could, I'd like to share the screen.
You should have permission. If you
Okay.
try it.
Can everyone see the drawings?
It's not shared, Christina.
Not just yet. Yeah.
There,
Oh.
it's coming.
Can you see
Okay.
the drawings now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We started this process last year. This is a house that I did work on in the past, and I designed this addition that is on the north side of the house. It's a center hall brick colonial. It has a higher middle hipped roof and a lower hipped roof. And the idea was to extend the hipped roof forward so we could create a two-car garage with a driveway off of Hancock. This is our site plan, and the house currently has a very long driveway that is in the aqueduct buffer. That's the shaded area here. And the existing garage is also in the buffer. This is a level part of the property. The rest of the property slopes down. And as you can see, the existing house, which is the unshaded portion, is located in the southeastern corner of the site. And the goal was to remove this driveway and relocate it so that the entrance would be off of Hancock and the garage would be located on this side of the house. This is the only way we can really give the property owners a private yard. And because the rest of the site is not private, it's a corner lot. So we went to the planning board. This is the approved plan, approved by the planning board, the zoning board, the village engineer. And when we started the process, we had presented these drawings to the planning board for 2 months, and then we were asked to get an arborist report to take a look at the trees that would be affected by our proposal. So this drawing here is our landscaping plan. We hired Aspect 120 licensed landscape architect who developed a plan so that to replace the driveway that we would have a very heavily landscaped buffer with a fence, a deer fence in between. This also is an area where right now joggers and deers will just come off the aqueduct right onto the property. So there was this buffer was going to give privacy for the homeowner and also a nice natural looking buffer between the house and the aqueduct. On the other side of the property, where the new driveway would be located, we also landscaped this area. You see, we try to minimize the driveway. It's actually 700 square feet less than the old driveway. We curved it, we located the garage doors so it faced the side yard because people often park in front of their garage. And we also curved the driveway so we could have plants and shrubbery in front of the cars so it would minimize the view of the cars from the Hancock. This was discussed, revised, and this is the final plan that was approved by the village landscape architect, Susan Nolan. I'm just going to show you some of the 3D images that we showed the architectural review board. The top view is our original submission, but the bottom view is the final design showing the addition to the right. This addition has been designed to have the same details of the original house, similar roof angle, roof lines, dormer windows, shutters, same style of windows, same dental frieze board moldings and trim. And these are just more views of the addition from Hancock. As you can see, the garage door is tucked in on the right because the the driveway curves around to the right. This is another image we showed the ARB showing the existing view of the house from Hancock. You can see the house is pushed way back from the street. And then this is our proposed showing the addition coming forward and showing all the trees that we are keeping. There was quite, these are just some of our views. This is the back of the house. And this is our looking down just to show how the addition ties in with the existing hip roof and dormers that exist. And this is our color material scheme that we showed the architecture review board, showing the tie-in of the brick veneer, the dormers, the dental trim, and all the other details that we presented to the board. So that's the project in a nutshell, and I really appreciate the mayor and the board of trustees hearing our request for an appeal, because at the time when we went to the ARB, we had already spent several months, 3 meetings with the planning board, 1 with zoning to get to this point. And you know, our solution, we feel, really marries ties in the extension with the original house and still keeps a really beautifully landscaped property in front and along the aqueduct. I have other drawings of the additions in case anyone has any questions with me.
Christina, this is Lino. Can you just go back to the site plan? I just want to be able just to point out the fence as well, just the location of it.
Could I say something, Lino? I don't think it's really relevant to be raising the fence since you withdrew that from the ARB application, and it's not part of the appeal decision. So I think the fence is irrelevant.
Well, no, it is for the sake of the site plan. So I just want, because we did reserve our right to come back with the fence, Marianne, and we did pull it from the ARB. I just, for purposes of just showing the site plan, because again, the fence is a structure and it's on the site plan. So we weren't moving the fence. In terms of materials of the fence and what we were going to do in terms of height, in terms of materials, that will come back for. But the actual location, I just wanted Christina to show it because it is on the site plan. We didn't remove it from the site plan because it was approved by the planning board in this location. So if you could just show that briefly, Christina.
Yes, there's our proposal includes a deer fence along the aqueduct and also along Ardsley Avenue, and then towards and then it turns towards the house so that we could enclose the yard and keep it safe from the deer. And this is also shown on our landscape plan. I also want to add that we took a month break between meetings so that we could get a very detailed arborist report. We had an arborist visit the property and look at the condition of the trees and also our new plans to see which plants would survive or trees and which wouldn't. We have a tulip tree here, and we had curved the driveway to try to keep away from the drip line, and it was determined that this would have to be removed. And the planning board felt that since there is such a benefit in removing a driveway from the aqueduct buffer, that was a compromise that seemed that would be acceptable to them.
Thank you, Christina. So that's pretty much the essence of our appeal. Again, this all started because the Okamuras wanted a little bit of an outdoor space so they could play with their new child outdoors, which is the reason why the garage was moved from the aqueduct up to the other side, just to give the Okamuras a bit of a level playing area in the yard as well as a family room. So that's really how this all started. Again, the site plan itself, these elements which we just went through, were things that we believe the applicant should be able to rely upon when they go to the ARB, and without having that determination be disturbed by, we believe, that elements that are outside of the purview of the ARB. So really that is the essence of our appeal. Again, you have my correspondence, and What Christina put on here in terms of her screen, you also have in your packets, which was submitted. So again, for reference, you can refer to the attachments in my letter if the member, mayor of the board would like to go back and review that. So thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Is that all that you and your applicant would like to say at this time?
At this time, Mayor, I understand this is a public hearing. We would like the opportunity to address any comments at the end of the public comments, to address any issues that we believe need to be addressed. I just do want to say one other thing, and just by way of procedure, you know, this application with respect to the planning board approvals, and you may or may not be aware of this, I'm sure you are, but the planning board determination has been challenged by the neighbors. There has been an Article 78 against the planning board with respect to this. And the reason why I mention that is simply because, you know, that's a separate proceeding, and it really should have no bearing this evening on you, Mayor, and the trustees in terms of what you have to look at this evening. They did file an Article 78 proceeding against the planning board, but that being said, that's going to go through its course in the courts. So that should not weigh or factor into the deliberations and discussions that your board is to have this evening with respect to this appeal. That's all. I just wanted to make sure the record was clear on that. Thank you.
Understood. So at this time, we will open up for public comment.
Should I stop the share?
Yeah, if you stop to share, we can, I can see if who's raising their hand.
Okay, so Kristen Wilson. Okay.
Hello,
Good
Kristen.
evening. Hi, good evening, Mayor and members of the Board of Trustees. I am here this evening before you representing the property owners of 1 Hancock Place, 9 Hancock Place, and 10 Hancock Place, the immediate neighbors, the most impacted property owners in your village. And I wanted to first, again, thank you for taking the time to listen to our concerns, but also to highlight a few points that I did raise in a letter I submitted to the village this afternoon. I included all of the correspondence that my clients did submit to the ARB as well. So I'm not sure if you have had a chance to review that information, but that was all before the ARB at the time that they rendered their decision to deny the application. And what is clear to me, and I submit that it would be clear to the board in this instance, is that the ARB went above and beyond in their due diligence and their thoroughness in looking at not just the application as submitted to them, but also what the planning board did. They also considered what the zoning board did to get a full understanding of the application. The property, as you probably know, is very unique. It is adjacent to the old Croton Aqueduct. It is in Ardsley Park. It sits on a corner lot. It currently has a driveway adjacent to the old Croton Aqueduct, they're looking to replace that and put a new curb cut on Hancock, changing the dynamic of that residential street. What the Okamores are asking you to do in this appeal is essentially ignore the authority that the ARB does have. Simply because an applicant, a property owner, obtains planning board approval and zoning board approval does not mean that they get a building permit automatically. There is a final and essential step at the ARB, and that's where this application seemed to fall very short of following the village code. For 3 meetings, for 3 public hearings, the ARB consistently raised issues about the massing of the addition, specifically the garage, that it was inconsistent with the neighborhood. That's entirely within their jurisdiction. They raised concerns about the driveway location coming off of Hancock, the fact that the driveway, due to the design proposed by the applicant, was going to require the removal and destruction of a very large, mature tulip tree. They made comments about the proposed fence, yes, because it dissects the otherwise continuous green lawn of Ardsley Park. This is one of those things that Irvington cares very much about. Earlier on your agenda tonight, you were thrilled with the Octagon House and that it was landmarked. because you care about those significant structures, how the village looks. You care about the different neighborhoods. This particular property is a very unique piece of property, and you need to consider, I submit to you that the ARB considered, and this board should also consider, the impacts directly associated with yet another addition to this single family home. For 3 hearings, the ARB really was trying to work with the applicant, asking them to consider doing something with the garage that would make it appear less massive, that perhaps relocating the driveway, doing some type of modification to address the concerns of the neighbors, to look at the fence and see if the location of it and the type and the materials and the color, if there was another way to address the applicant's concern, as well as the immediately surrounding neighbors' concerns. Nothing was done. This was all within the ARB's authority. They have the ability and the authority to look at an application and determine whether or not it is consistent and harmonious with the actual property and the neighborhood. They did this for several hours. It resulted in an 8-page finding statement that this board is now considering. What I would also like to raise is that Mr. Pasco, one of the property owners that I represent, did reach out to the Okamoras back in late 2019, early 2020, concerned about the tulip tree. He was assured by Mr. Okamura that the tulip tree would be preserved. He went back and checked the new plans, and the tulip tree was going to be preserved. They were going to modify the plans. So no, he didn't appear at the planning board because he thought his concern was going to be addressed. Lo and behold, the plans changed back, reverted back to another modification, and the tulip tree was going to be removed. And no communications from the Okamoras were made. I'm not saying that he was required to tell Mr. Pasco that the plans changed again and his concern that was once alleviated was not going to be the case anymore. But it was only at the time that the ARB was hearing this application that it became known that the tree was going to be removed. So I respectfully submit, as laid out in my submission to you and as specified by the 3 most impacted neighbors, that the ARB did do their due diligence. They, unlike your prior application that you heard 2 or 3 months ago, where there was an issue with the installation of windows prior to seeking ARB approval, this is a totally different situation. Here you have the immediately adjacent, all the neighbors concerned and raising substantive concerns. You have a situation where it's not just a procedural issue that the ARB found issue with. There are some real substantive concerns. And you have a very substantial record before the ARB that wasn't before you in the, I believe it was the 10 North Eckhart application. And that application dealt with the installation of windows. This is dealing with a massive addition to a single family home, the relocation of a driveway, the removal of large specimen trees, and really changing the entire appearance of this neighborhood. So I respectfully request that you uphold the ARB's denial, find that they did their job, and the applicant certainly can come back to the village with a modified plan that addresses some of these concerns. I'm happy to address any questions that the board may have, but otherwise I will just refer to my written submission.
Anybody on the board have any questions? I think the one question I had when we were kind of looking at the findings of fact of the ARB, or at least when I was looking at it, and you just referenced it now, which was, I'm not sure the ARB usually has any kind of jurisdiction on massing and things like that. That is usually the purview of the planning board. And I just wanted to kind of get your take on why you thought that the ARB should be commenting on that. Similar to me, the tree, like, to me, it is sad that they weren't able to save the tulip tree, but, it's not typically something that the ARB looks at, and especially that specific tree. So I was just curious as to your, understanding on why, or your take on why you think that was in their purview.
Sure. What's clear is that in the village code under section 9-1, which is applicable to the ARB, one of the primary purposes for having the ARB is for them to consider an application and whether it's continuous or it continues the harmonious development of the village. So does it use the word massing? No. Does it use the technical words of FAR or side yard setbacks or impervious surface and coverage? No, it does not. Those are planning board terms. The ARB is to look at the exterior appearance of buildings and other structures, the harmonious development, and to prevent the impairment of property values. Those are all I just read in part from the ARB's authority. So when they are looking at an application, if it looks too big, whether they use the word massing or simply that it is out of character with the other buildings and other single family homes in the neighborhood, essentially they are talking about the overall development of that neighborhood, whether the buildings are, if there's a continuous look to them that's harmonious. So if you have a building that is out of scale, that doesn't mean it's out of their purview. That is what they're supposed to look at. So you have some type of overall look and feel to a neighborhood. So it's not disjointed, and you have, houses that are much larger and then next to much smaller homes. So Mr. Mayor, I respectfully submit that the ARB does have that ability. You may not see those technical terms as part of their authority, but they absolutely can look at the exterior appearances, at the harmonious development. Is there a continuous feel and look that you want to preserve? No different than you having larger setbacks along Broadway or other main thoroughfares in Irvington. There's a certain feel that you have in different areas of the village. And here they saw a very unique piece of property and said, wait a second, this is way too big. It doesn't fit. Let's try something different. And we didn't get anything much different back.
So I have a comment I'd like to add to Brian's question. My problem I'm having, I have the same basic question, is that the code is very specific in the tools it gives the planning board, in that it specifies that they can have consultants to come in and give them technical feedback on stuff, and they have a budget for that, and their cost is passed on to the applicant. And traditionally, for years and years, the planning board has looked at FAR, bulk, and things like coverage and setbacks and stuff. And the ZBA considers variances to such. I really don't see a history of the ARB looking at setbacks and coverage and FAR in bulk. They do sometimes make spot changes in roof lines and in dormers and stuff like that definitely help the overall appearance of the building. But none of those kinds of changes would ever require the applicant to go back through the whole process again, go back to the planning board and go through a whole site review and an engineering review to make adjustments based upon whatever the ARB's determination was. That to me is highly unfair to an applicant, because now they're going back and having to spend additional money. Engineering analysis, stormwater analysis is not cheap. And that has to be redone if changes to the building shape, location, and so on happen. So the other part of it, well, I'll leave it at that right now, but that's sort of my concern. And I think that we don't want to get into the circular kind of process flow within the village. I think that what you're proposing for the ARB is an extremely broad reading of their mandate. And a straightforward reading of the mandate would be that they really are looking at what I call fit and finish, look and feel. They don't have any tools provided to them for consultancy or expert analysis. So to me, the code is quiet on that for the ARB. And so that would give me pause and make me want to read it in a minimum reading of what their scope is. And that's my take on it.
Sure. If I could respond just briefly, I believe your ARB they have at least one architect on that board, and they are chosen and appointed, I should say, to the ARB to be the, for lack of a better term, the citizen review board of these applications to ensure that it is harmonious with the neighborhood, with the area in which the building is being proposed. So no, they don't have consultants. They don't have the engineers on their board, or advising the board, but the group of them and their own expertise and their own experience does have a lot of professional experience in reviewing these types of applications and making a very reasonable and thoughtful determination as to whether the application fits. So again, simply because it passes the planning board and is approved and the zoning board grants approvals, that doesn't mean that the ARB's authority and approval is removed. It is still there. That is a final step that is required. And maybe you haven't seen an appeal with this type of these types of substantive concerns because there hasn't been one before, because this application is just too much for this one lot and this location.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, I've sat in on planning board and ARB activity now for years. I've been the trustee liaison to both boards. And, you know, to say that the expertise in terms of things like the planning aspects and the stormwater aspects and the engineer aspects are all focused on the planning board. And that's not just, the planning board has an architect as well, as we know, but that's not just to diminish the fact that the ARB has an important activity in terms of, you know, how the buildings or the structures look and fit in. And that's always been interpreted for years as a function of, you know, the finish and that sort of thing. But the second thing I want to point out is, you know, I don't want to see, we need to avoid in my opinion, we need to avoid a circular process. And one way that could be avoid that, and something that, you know, we did when I was chair of the tree commission, was we had someone always sit in on the planning board meetings. And if they saw that there was an issue, they would stand up and say, you know, the tree commission is going to want to come back to you on this. And that prevented misunderstandings from filtering down through the whole process. Likewise, I mean, I know we don't need to talk about solutions, but a simple solution would have an ARB member attend the planning board, and they would have seen immediately that there was an issue. But as it is, they do get a complete set of plans and all modifications of the plans for their review.
May I just make a brief comment, if that's okay, Mayor, members of the board, as to council's comments? Because there's something that was stated that I want to have corrected. So if that's okay, may I do that at this point?
I'm muted, but go ahead, Lino.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a statement made by council that somehow her client wasn't aware of this tulip tree and that somehow we snuck something in. And I just want to state for the record that the chairman of the ARB was in attendance at the planning board. And also at the ARB meeting, the one of 3 that we had, the ARB chairman did note at that meeting when when Ms. Wilson insinuated that somehow the applicant, Okamura, tried to sneak something in, the chairman was very clear that this was all out in the open. Mr. Pasco was, and Ms. Wilson is correct, we tried originally to try and save that tree. At the subsequent meeting before the planning board requested an arborist. We decided to do that, and it was open throughout. So, and the chairman of the ARB did note that there was nothing that the Okamuras did here that was sneaky or behind the scenes. Everything was done in the open. So for council to suggest that, I would go back and look at the record of the ARB meeting where the chairman stated that there was nothing that my client did to hide anything here. It was out in the open. The second thing I'd just like to add is, it's interesting how we hear that, they had all these issues at the ARB, but yet not one of the clients mentioned by Ms. Wilson ever attended a ZBA or a planning board meeting throughout this process. It wasn't until, I don't know why, but it wasn't until the ARB that these issues started to come up. And here's another thing that you heard. You heard thinking about things about the terms are not there. And I'm glad Ms. Wilson said that. The terms, you're right, are not there. The terms that she mentioned are terms that are, in fact, as been stated by a member of this board, terms that are reserved for the planning board. This is not a question of feel, because if that were the case, you can take every planning board determination, every zoning board determination, and if you don't like it, go to the ARB and have the ARB act as the ultimate arbiter of what is considered a good feel or not. I'll submit to you that kind of subjective nature of this is really, if that is what is being considered here, that's just simply not the law and not the right procedure. So to the extent that there are terms, those terms are in the zoning code. We did follow those. And with respect to any ambiguity in your code and whether it's clear or not, those things, as your counsel will tell you, are always construed in favor of the applicant, i.e. the Okamuras. So again, I just took exception to that comment with respect to somehow we decided to hide something when in fact the record is very clear by the ARB chairman himself that that is not the case. So thank you.
Thank you. I know Deb Hargraves has her hand up as well. I'd like to hear from her if we could, Larry.
Yep, hold on. Okay. Deb, there you go. Deb? Doesn't seem to be working.
Shows it's on mute, so I'm not sure.
Well, no, it's been going, she's trying back and forth, but when it's unmuted, we're still not hearing her. Do you want to try to log back in maybe, or I can probably dig up a dialed-in number for you. It's unfortunate.
Well, we'll figure this out. Does anybody else want to speak while we're getting Deb mic'd up? Rick.
Rick Mazzullo, yeah, hold on. Rick?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're loud and clear, Rick.
Okay. Two things. One, I do not have a recollection of being at a planning board meeting while this case was being discussed at the planning board. And number two, the only thing representation I made to the legal representative of APOA was that the tree was not in the ARB's purview. That's all I said.
Okay. Thank you, Rick.
Yep.
Make Rick talk some more until Deb's on?
Well, I just took him off. But,
That's okay, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that to Rick.
let me try something different. Hold on. Deb, let's see if I can. Let me try to promote her as a panelist and see if that works. Hold on. Deb, you want to try it one more time?
Right now. Can you hear me now?
Ah,
Yes.
See that? My husband can fix anything.
There you go.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, excellent. Sorry about that. It's worked many, many more times. I just thought I should address a few of the points that was raised earlier. So Deborah Hargraves, member of the ARB, especially because what is one of the main points raised by the applicant's counsel, as well as that's come up from members of the Board of Trustees, is what is outside the purview of the ARB. And I wanted to make it clear that when we looked at this application, we looked very clearly at what our charge was. And while the council has pointed out Chapter 9 and in particular the purpose 9.1, we also look at Section 9.2. And it states, in at least my reading of that provision, that we do look at exterior materials, we look at fenestration, we look at geometry of structure, which includes things such as the roof and porch and other elements that were mentioned before. And those elements of geometry of structure, in our opinion, are things that are clearly within our purview. And in fact, our practice would demonstrate that. If you look at past applications, we're often looking at dormers and the type of roof and the type of windows and items such as that. And one of the things I believe this board tries very hard to do is not exceed the scope of what we are charged to do. And we certainly don't look to have an applicant go back and redo the process if they went to the planning board or the zoning board, but rather we look to complement what the planning board has already looked at, and therefore we're looking at the exterior elements of this design. When we looked at this application, and we spent a great deal of time looking at what the planning board looked at in particular, as well as the zoning board, it was quite clear to us in reviewing the minutes and in listening to the applicant as to what they had already reviewed in prior meetings with the planning board, that they spent the vast bulk of their time looking at the aqueduct. And it is quite clear in our findings of fact and what we attached as the minutes and what we refer to, that the vast majority of time was spent on both the landscaping of the aqueduct, removing the driveway away from the aqueduct. They were concerned about making the aqueduct look more natural. They were thrilled that there would no longer be an active driveway with cars that would be driving along the aqueduct. And in fact, what they did not spend time on was looking at the elevations of these drawings. We attached the minutes. I assume that you've read them. We spent a considerable amount of time on these findings of fact in particular, to be very fair, to give this board a very thorough review and overview of the process. It's why the vast majority of the 8-page decision is to try to take a lot of material that was, consisting of application, a review of the minutes, trying to cobble it together to understand in this instance with this particular house in Ardsley Park, what did the planning board and the zoning board look at? What elevations, what scale, what massing? And our opinion, as set forth in the decision, was that they did not look at the elevations. They did not look at the elements that we were looking at. And so we try to work with the applicant. It's why there were 3 hearings. We felt very strongly, especially our architect, who is notable on our ARB, spent a considerable amount of time trying to explain why the garage as designed should be improved. And I would submit to you, if you look at the original design that the applicant submitted, and you look at the design after they worked with the ARB, that garage does look better. I mean, in terms of the windows, in terms of the dormer, it is a far more attractive garage than it was before. And I would also submit that the mere fact that the architect who we've worked with before came to us and actually adopted some of what was recommended by the architect shows you that she also understands, based on practice and procedure, that these are elements within the scope of our review. I mean, she's been before us before, and in fact, she adopted some of what was recommended by our architect. So to say that we are acting outside the purview of what we typically do, I think is unfounded. I would also suggest that we in no way, shape, or form said to this applicant that you need to go back and get new site plan approval. I think this is now kind of got to a point where we're not even in the realm of what the ARB was asking this applicant to do. We simply said that they needed to look at this garage, bring down the massing, bring down the scale, and they would have a far more harmonious structure and design that was in keeping with beautiful Hancock Place. And what was not done here is that this was not a decision made because of some type of personality or taste or preference as to what the ARB individually or collectively was looking for in this house. We were very concerned that we had a house that had a lot that they were trying to tackle. They were moving a driveway, they were taking down trees, they were putting up a fence, they were cutting into Hancock Place for a curb, they were putting the garage in the front of the house, moving it from the back of the house, they were adding dormers on top of the garage, different materials going on. There was no landscape in the front when it came to us. All the landscape was focused on the back and the aqueduct. So I just want to again emphasize that this is a set of hearings that we felt very compassionately for the applicant. I will be honest with you, we understood that the process they had been through up until this point, but we are also very, very concerned about the design of this house and keeping it within, you know, the harmonious nature of Hancock Place and Ardsley Park. And the last point I'll make is that the fence to me is one that really is kind of summarizes where this applicant felt was within the ARB's purview, both on the village website as well as clearly in Chapter 9, fencing always falls within the ARB. It's one thing that we universally look at because we know that the planning board does not. And yet in this application, the lawyer for the applicant said right off the bat in the first hearing that we were not allowed to look at the fencing. It was already decided by the planning board. And we made it very clear that the fencing was not in keeping, both in material, height, and style for both Hancock Place and in Ardsley Park. And as a result, they withdrew fencing from the application because they didn't want to hold it up. But they continued to argue that fencing, as well as all the other issues, are something that the ARB cannot decide. So I think with this particular application, what is and is not within the purview of the ARB is something that you'll have to look to counsel for. It is something that clearly, you know, we look for guidance as well. But I do not want anyone to be confused that we asked nor or suggested to counsel or the applicant that they need to go back and start the site plan approval all over again, because that is not what we said.
But go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, but that is the net result, because as soon as you change the footprint of the size of the garage or you change the driveway, it immediately has to have site plan approval as a change.
We did not ask for the driveway to be changed. We never ever suggested that they had.
I think there was a discussion of repositioning the driveway so to save the tree. If I remember that, and there was certainly a discussion of changing the garage from a two garage to a one garage and reducing the bulk of the structure. Any one of those things would have caused it to immediately have to go back to the planning board, whether or not that was the intention of the ARB. At least in my understanding of what it takes, that would be a site plan revision.
Again, I would leave that to legal counsel to tell you whether that is.
Yeah, well, they cannot get, they would not be able to get a certificate of occupancy without having the planning board sign off on the changes, as far as I understand it, because that's what happens to every other application that makes changes in mid-process.
I just want to add, and I keep going to this, you know, all I keep hearing constantly is mass, size, and I keep going to your code and I keep looking at those are specific elements for the planning board. I mean, I want to remind everyone that this particular project, this home, is sized to code. Your zoning code permits this structure of this size to be on this property. There were no variances there were variances with respect to coverage, but as to the bulk and the FAR, i.e. the massing, which I keep hearing over and over again, this is a permitted structure. And with all due respect to the comments that we've just heard, any one of you board members and mayor can go back and look at the video of the ARB meetings. The discussion was on the fence and clearly on reducing the massing of the garage. So, and again, I'm not going to go back and repeat, but you can go for yourselves and look at those minutes and see exactly what was discussed. But again, the common denominator here that I keep hearing and that we've been hearing now during this public hearing is massing and size, and that just continues. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd like to know if I could talk.
Was that Deb again? I'm sorry. Oh, no, sorry. No. Sure, go ahead.
Christina.
I was like, it sounds like a different voice.
Well, first of all, I want to mention that I was chair of the ARB in Hastings for 11 years, wrote design guidelines. We win awards every year or two from the AIA. And the design of this house and every house we work on is very important to our firm. And I care a lot about bulk and scale. And we really looked hard at how we would move this garage to the other side of the house. And it's the only way we can give a usable yard to our clients. And the FAR, that the house as approved by the planning board and the zoning board meets the FAR requirements. We did not get a variance for that. And the floor area ratio is a measurement of bulk. It's commonly known as a way to measure the bulk of a building. And it's within the maximum that's allowed for this zoning district. It's not that we ask for variance for that. And I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Also, a lot of the details we talked about, we kept adding detail because we kept bringing more 3D views of the addition. So we were adding a lot of the landscaping that was already on the landscape plans, but we put it on our 3D. But we did add and improved a lot of the details of the building to tie in with the existing house. And we spent a lot of time on that. Not assuming and accepting that we had our approvals for the size and the bulk of this building from the planning board.
Okay, thank you for that.
Well, I would just comment, just as a comment, and again, as a non-expert and a person who's lived in the village for 35 years and has done one or two additions to my home, and live in a neighborhood where there are additions going on fairly commonly, especially, in recent times. When I get a notice that a neighbor is planning to do something, I go over and talk to the neighbor and ask them what they want to do and sort of make a decision for myself whether it's something I want to live with or not. And if I don't, I make sure I go to a planning board meeting to at least listen to what's going on and to get a better understanding of what's happening. It seems a lot of the arguments that were brought in front of the ARB and a lot of what I read in their findings of facts, had these things been brought up by the neighbors at the planning board process, it may have been different. It may have changed and it may have been different at that point. And I'm not quite sure why it happened that way, that it took until 5-6 months later when it first went to the ARB that arguments were brought up that in my mind, would have been better brought up at the planning board process.
I just want to add one more thing. For the planning board, we did a comparison of this house with houses in the neighborhood. And this house is within the range of the size of houses that are there. There are many larger homes, and there are many of these circular driveways that are much larger on Hancock. And most houses have 2-car attached garages. So I did not agree that this is not in keeping with the character of the neighboring houses. I don't think that's true.
Christine, I would also ask, I walked the neighborhood yesterday and I noticed that there's already a curb cut, I think, where the proposed new driveway is going to be. Was that an existing curb cut for some reason?
I don't know. There is some speculation that there was a driveway there originally. There was the garage was on that side, yeah.
For that house?
But I don't have any evidence of that.
There's definitely a curb cut. I saw it as well there. Deb might have our answer on the curb cut. Or Rick, or both. Deb, you're back.
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. How about that?
Gotta use Daniel this time.
I just wanted to say quickly, because I happened to be there when they were repaving Hancock and they put new curbs in. They made the curb cut then. It was never there beforehand. And when I asked, why is the curb cut going in? They said, we understand. I don't know if it was our building inspector or somehow it came from the building department, but whoever made the curb cut was instructed to make it because a new driveway was going in. I do not think it was original to the house and it was there in the past.
How long ago was that, Deb?
They repaved Hancock I think in 2019, and somehow they knew to make that curb cut, but I've walked that street before. It wasn't there in 2018. I can tell you that.
It did look brand new to me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
think I
Deb.
would add, I believe from my client that the building department asked us to put in, because once we got the planning board approval, when they did it, they asked us to put we put those curbs in then. The village asked us to put it in once we got planning board approval. So that's when they came to be. And I just heard that from my client. Because the village was putting in new curbs, and that's why they did that.
I assume Rick had that answer and didn't have something else to add. Any other public comment? Does not look like it. So what do we think, board? Wait for Mark to get back. Oh, there he is, just off camera.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to look something up on my computer, but I couldn't find it. So anyways, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, the public hearing's still open. I think we can decide. Yeah, I do think that, we did just get that letter, at, I got it around 5 or 5:15 today. So I quickly skimmed through it. I didn't go through it all the way. I have to admit, I only got through 2 of the ARB meetings and 2 of the planning board meetings. And I think I kind of heard enough, to be honest, to kind of get a sense of things. And, I did walk the property and I did read a lot more about the ARB code and things. I don't know, what do board members think they need some more time to think about this? Or do you think you're ready to rule tonight? We do have the option, if we don't make a decision tonight, to not have to wait to November 2nd, which is our next board meeting. We can adjourn again just for this topic if we'd like. But I don't know how people feel about this. I mean, to me, there's just been so much information that do you need more time to process it? Have you heard enough?
Mayor, if I may just add just one quick thing, if it's okay. I mean, being that there's no public comment, I understand you received a lot of information. You received a letter at 5 o'clock today. Obviously, I won't talk about the timing of that, but we submitted our letter at least well in advance of tonight's meeting. But if there is no public comment, I would respectfully request that at least the board close the hearing, and to the extent that there needs to be any further written information into the record, to leave some opportunity to do that, so that we would hopefully get a decision, again, if not tonight, as I'm hearing, possibly by the next meeting. But I guess having heard that there's no further public comment, I would respectfully request that public hearing be closed.
Understood.
Brian,
I'll see what the rest of the board thinks.
yeah,
Thank you.
I was just going to respond to your thought about getting some of the papers and some of the information. And I have no problem closing the public hearing, but I would like at least several days to digest and explore some of these issues just myself. So if it's a matter of sometime before the next meeting, I certainly can look at my calendar, as I think the rest of us can. And perhaps I would suggest closing the public hearing, but not finalizing our decision. I'd like to think about it a little more.
Okay. What other people think?
I agree with that. I agree with Connie's approach. And we've had a lot of information. Many of us have spent a good portion of the weekend watching tapes of meetings. It's good to see you here in person and hear people talking live about it. But it's an important issue. There's a lot of aspects to it. I think we have all the information we need. So I would support closing the public meeting and coming back really within a couple of days. I think that it's a matter of just taking a final read, giving some final thought. But the last thing we want to do at this point, to be fair to both parties, is to just say, okay, great, we heard everything. This is what we're going to do. Give us some chance to process.
Agreed. I do see another hand up for public comment. So I will interrupt the board's discussion to go to A&A.
Hi, this is Alex McLaughlin. I live on 47 Ardsley Avenue West, just close to the Okamoras. I think since you're entertaining closing public comment, I just wanted to say a couple of things. We're undergoing a renovation in our home. Currently, we were lockstep in this process with the Okamoras and all the same planning board and zoning board meetings, as well as ARB meetings. Actually, Christina Griffin is our architect as well. So we're very familiar with the process that they went through. And I think in terms of all of this, we're very respectful of all our neighbors. We understand there's many different opinions on this. We like all of our neighbors. And so, and I think I was a little bit hesitant to say anything because I fear alienating anybody around us, because we do have the most respect for everybody in Ardsley Park and our immediately adjacent neighbors. But I think in terms of going through this process and knowing how difficult it is and how expensive it is, and everything that any property owner goes through, I would really underscore all the comments that Mark made. We really appreciate his perspective on this, just listening to this meeting. And I think that the board should really take those opinions into consideration as far as their decision on Okamora's property.
Thank you very much. And good luck with your project.
Yeah, we're all good. Thanks.
Brian, I'm okay with taking a couple of days.
Okay.
Just remember Thursday's debate.
Yep. Yeah, no, and I think we've gotten a lot of, we have gotten a lot of information. It would be good to take a deep breath and review it all. Should we, if the debate's Thursday, do we want to look at, Larry, are there any other village meetings on the 21st, which is Wednesday?
Hold on, just double check here. I don't
Is that
think,
enough time for everyone?
Yeah, I guess that's the first question.
I'm looking at the Wednesday, the 21st, looks like an appropriate day for the amount of time I need, and that looks like an evening that is available.
yeah, there's no village meetings that I can see.
Okay.
Okay with me?
Mayor Rick Rizzullo has his hand up.
Hey, Rick,
Hold on.
you can promote him or whatever you do, Larry, whatever magic.
I got it. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to remind everyone that the code for the village on overturning the ARB is to remand the case back to the ARB. And our next meeting is this coming Monday, and we will not meet again until the week of Thanksgiving. So just as a point of information.
Thank you.
Monday, the 26th?
Yes.
Okay.
The 26th, not the 19th.
No, the 26th.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking about us reconvening on the 21st, which would be in advance of that.
It works within that time frame.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be enough time to get it on your agenda, Rick?
You'd have to ask the building department that. I'm not sure. I would assume so, but I don't know what the terms of the decision is going to be.
Sure.
Yeah, and all the documents are on file, so I'd assume it could be turned around quickly.
I would assume.
Great. Thanks, Rick. That's helpful. Appreciate it.
You got it.
But Rick, didn't it come on the Bernstein one? Didn't that come back to you very quickly?
Around the same amount of time,
Yeah. Yeah, so then if that was okay with the building
No,
department.
but I mean, if you were going to take longer, it would be very difficult to get it on the agenda. That's what I'm
No,
saying.
no, yeah, no,
Sure.
but, okay, I think Wednesday would work. That was my recollection. It was about the same turnaround time on
It
that.
was. Actually, it was a Tuesday, but one day is not going to matter.
Yeah.
So,
Let Ed come in extra early on Thursday.
was that, did I hear a basic agreement on the Wednesday, the 21st? Yes.
7?
Okay with me?
At
Okay,
7?
so
7 o'clock?
7
7
o'clock.
o'clock is good. Yep.
So I will make a motion to close the public hearing. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we'll reconvene on the 21st to render a decision.
Okay, and we'll post the information to the website so people have it, but obviously people who are in attendance now know, so.
It will be in sequester the entire time until then. Only because of a pandemic, though. But okay, great. So I guess we'll need a motion to adjourn as well.
Just want to say thank you all for entertaining us tonight and for listening to our concerns. Thank you very much for the discussion.
Thanks, Lino. I'll make a motion to adjourn if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
See you Wednesday.